Well, hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Monthly Coaching Club. I'm so excited to have this guest here. I've actually, as I was planning my year, I think I reached out to Melanie in like January and I was like, hey, I want to have you on this. I don't really know when I'm going to have you on this, but I think that you'd be a really valuable person to have on. Let me introduce you. I'm actually not going to introduce her. I'm going to let Melanie introduce herself because I think she tells the story in a much more interesting fashion than I have. But today we're going to talk all about like websites, content, organic growth, and how you can generate some leads for yourself doing the work that way. Melanie's built a really incredible business doing tons of content, like before it was cool to do content, as I always say. And she's really kind of doubled down on that strategy. So we're going to go through her journey and how she's done it. So Melanie, tell everybody about yourself.
All right. I am a broker in Toronto. We are the world's largest real estate board with 55,000 members and about 110,000 sales a year. And that's important because the competition to fund clients is beyond fierce in Toronto. And it's a big part of the reason we built the business the way we did. So we've been running a team. I work with my husband, Brendan, who Alyssa knows as well. And we've got 14 people on the team right now. I've been in the business for 11 years, and 80% of our business is generated from our website for the entire team. So it is a critical part of our business. This year, we should do about 150 million in sales.
Yeah, and one thing I want you guys to hear when she says that is that it's generated from her website. So not from online, from her website. So I think that is a really important distinction. And I mean, Melanie being in Toronto, they didn't have, Zillow for years, and Zillow's just kind of coming in. And so I think that has allowed you to sort of be at the forefront of building your site this way. So talk to me a little bit about kind of when you guys got into real estate and you really decided like, hey, I feel like we should put some energy toward our site. Talk to me kind of through that mindset of, why did you feel like that was like the right investment of your time and resources?
So real estate, like probably many people on the phone today, second career for me. I was lucky enough to get into real estate in 2008 and listed my first property the day Lehman Brothers went down. So that was all sorts of awesome. The recession was really short in Toronto, but I had a really good first year, and I thought this is the easiest business in the world. And I convinced my husband to join. I was like, oh my God, we're going to have so much fun. We're going to own our schedules. We can make all this money. And then year two hit and reality. And suddenly, all of these people who were magically buying during 2008 in my first year were not magically appearing at my door. And we were at a good brokerage, and they were very old school. So it was very much about cold calling and door knocking and postcards. And I come from an ad agency background, and I had no interest in any of those things. I hate when people show up at my door. I hate when people call my phone. So I was like, we've got to do this differently. And by now, there's two of us that are counting on this income. So now it's like, oh God, what have we done? Because now we've left those years.
Tagline, it's no fridge magnets, isn't it?
Yeah, no BS, no fridge magnets.
I love it. I mean, that to me is a way to immediately kind of distinguish yourself when somebody's looking at your site versus somebody else's.
Yeah, and I think people get what we're about right away. And we thought, okay, if we're not going to do any of the traditional things to get business, we need to do something. So I thought, okay, well, let's figure out this website thing. And I'm an all or nothing person. So when I go in pretty hard. So I did a lot of self-studying. I took courses, and I decided to teach myself websites, and not the building and development side, because I've got a great company I work with for that. But search engine optimization and content and how to drive traffic to my site. That became sort of an obsession, and still is. So in about 3 years into the journey, we had way more business than the two of us could handle, and we decided to build a team. So the team is actually born out of too many clients, which is a nice problem to have. Now I don't sell anymore. So it's been 2 years since I've been selling. I manage the team and I do the website, and that's a lot of my life. But it's something almost anybody can do. Not like developing it and all like the coding and stuff, but in terms of developing a website that actually generates a ton of leads, I think any of us are capable of it. I'm not particularly technical at all. I'm just very consistent. So when I started blogging, I was blogging 4 times a week.
Yep.
Then I went down to 3 times a week, and then I went back up to 5. Right now I'm blogging original blogs 7 times a week.
Yeah.
Which is almost killing me.
And
But
you have, like, because that consistency thing, so like consistency in anything, like if you continue to pick up the phone, you continue to door knock, like it always works if you keep doing it. But you kind of worked around, which I love this, and I actually didn't prep you on this question, so sorry about that. But yeah, I hung out with you and Brendan years ago, and I was like, how do you guys consistently put out this content? You were like, no, I'm way too scatterbrained to consistently do like 4 blogs a week. So I'll go away for a week and like I lock myself in and I write 40 blogs. And I mean, I think that to me is such a good strategy, because especially in real estate, like we do have lulls in our business and we do have things that we really could fill our time with. And like you taking that time to have, like, you can build a year's worth of content if you really invest like a full week into doing it. So in terms of that, and I don't want to totally segue, but in terms of that, like if somebody was saying to you, hey Mel, like I want to try, I really want to try at this. Like, did you make a list of blog topics? Do you keep a running list? Like, how do you come up with the ideas?
So I have a Trello board that I've done probably about 700 blogs, and I still have maybe 300 or 400 topics on that list. So anytime situations come up, messy situations, clients have questions, I don't know, bank appraisal didn't come in, what does that mean?
Yeah.
My money is all tied away, what do I do with a deposit? I just started adding all of those things onto there. We do a lot of stories now too, so when we'll have a client story, a good agent story, it goes in the Trello board for later. So I'm never sitting around thinking, what should I write about? It's actually a matter of going to this ridiculous board and being, okay, I want 1 buyer content, 1 seller content, go through, pick something I feel like writing.
Yep.
I tend to do a lot more evergreen, long-lasting content than the blogs that you follow me every day and it's my life. Both can work. For me, so it's less about having regular readers, though I have a lot of those. It's more about when somebody Googles something, I want to be what they find. So we get about 3,000 people a day on our site.
Wow.
And that's generating, like I say, 80% of our business is coming from that, which is awesome. That ties in with like Facebook and review sites. And I mean, it's not just one thing anymore. It's kind of a whole digital presence, but the main part of that is the website. And I'll go back and rewrite blogs. I'm in the midst right now of rewriting 400 blogs.
Yeah. And really. And I mean, like, as we've talked about before, and you guys kind of being at the level you are, like, this is becoming a lifelong obsession of Mel's. And so you can go so much deeper than just what you're writing. So I really do encourage you, if this is not a lifelong obsession of yours, to outsource some of this stuff and work with somebody to consult, like, okay, I've created all this content, but like, I don't really know how to make sure it gets found and things like that. Mel, I know you've invested a whole lot of time in learning that stuff and are really good at that stuff, but there are people out there that can help with it, correct?
For sure. And I think the key is you need to be really careful who you hire, because unfortunately websites and SEO companies know that most people don't understand.
Yeah, it's a
and take advantage of that. So I actually hired the person who was called and said they'd get me on the first page of Google. Like, I hired that person at $600 a month, which was a ridiculous sum of money for me 8 years ago. And obviously nothing came of it. And then I got really annoyed and I thought, you know what? I don't know who to trust. I don't know what to do. I'm going to learn it myself.
Yeah.
But there are some good people out there, but there are probably more bad people than good people. Kind of like realtors.
No, and it's interesting too, because so one of the things that you've done that I'm a huge fan of doing is I look outside the real estate industry for inspiration all the time. And it's something I know you do as well. But when it comes to websites, that makes 100% sense to do, because frankly, most real estate websites look exactly the same and saying the same stuff. And I think you guys, I obviously have getwhatyouwant.ca out there on the back end page, but you guys should check her site out if you be one of the 3,000 or be 3,001 today, and check out her site, because it is, you go there and it's kind of this refreshing feeling of like, this doesn't necessarily feel like just real estate. Like this feels like they're trying to help me. So when you were designing your site and thinking about, okay, what was I going to put up on the site? How important was it for you to sit there and as you've grown, how important was it for you to have it be your voice? And then how have you evolved that to include your team in there as well?
I think in the beginning, I mean, if you go back, I used to work corporate because you read my first blogs and they're very formal and very wooden. And I think that, while that's better than nothing, I don't think that converted because it sounded like everybody else's stuff, only a little bit more formal. So it took me probably a year to find my voice and to kind of be where I was comfortable. And it's very much the experience you have that someone will have with us online will be the same as the experience they'll have with us in person. Yeah. So it's not like we come in as like, super slick salespeople when you meet us. It's all kind of a very friendly and, we do a lot of truth telling and a lot of transparency, which people appreciate. We're covering their fears, their anxieties, their hopes, their dreams. I mean, that's what all our content is based about. And I think, I'll show up. I mean, back when I used to sell, I'd show up at a listing presentation like, wow, you sound exactly like your website. And that's what I wanted. Yeah. Because they think that's why people look at it and they're like, wow, she gets it. Like these people get us. We had someone fill out a real satisfied questionnaire last week. And the section that it talks about, why did you hire them? And they said, I saw the Brill website and thought if the people are anything like this, these are the people I want to sell my house. Yeah. And I was like, wow, like that was really nice to have that written down. But I think it really has to
you on that. That was great.
Yeah. Like your personality has to come out. If it's just the photo of the real estate agent and the about me, and if you're talking about honesty and integrity and exceeding expectations, I mean, everyone is saying the exact same stuff. Right. You really need to figure out who you are. And that comes with time. I mean, the more you write, the website I have today does not look like the first website. And it's evolved design and style, and certainly content every day. But the tone has been pretty much the same for about 6 years. Yeah. And it's not for everybody. I mean, we've spent a lot of time developing we call them personas of who are the people we're trying to serve and what do they look like? What do they do? Where do they spend their time? Right. We have 9 personas now. But you start with one, right? Who's your ideal client? What do they look like? And then speak to them. Yeah. And that makes your content list easy. It makes your tone easy because you're not going to use big, scary words if your niche is first time buyers. Totally. Right? You're not going to use jargon.
One thing that I love that you do that I think is so important is for years, we've attended real estate events and they say, people work with people that they like and that they feel like they can trust. And, if you read through any of Mel's team members' bios on there, hers or any of her team members, they have the bio, but then they have these photos of them in real life. And to me, it allows you to establish your credibility and then move to a place of I would hang out with that person, or I feel like that person kind of gets my lifestyle and knows what I mean. And so it's not even just the words you're using, although very important. It's also the photos that you're putting on there and things like that. And I think that from what you guys are doing is a break away from what you see on a lot of real estate websites where you have these very edited headshots, edited property photos. There's a time and a place for those very professional photos, but there's also, I think, a time and a place to be a little bit more open and vulnerable about who you are.
And that's the stuff that resonates with people. We're in the midst of a website facelift right now, actually. So our About Us pages are changing quite significantly to be even more casual. Yeah. We've been doing a series this summer spotlighting one of our agents every week, and I have them answer a set of questions. And then I write about why I love working with them and why they're part of the team. And those have been unbelievably powerful. Yeah. Not just in terms of social shares and excitement that's happening online, but now when new leads are coming in, they're not just clicking onto their kind of more formal bio. It's this one where, I'll joke about, negotiating at Marshall's. And I guess one of our agents does that and doesn't pay full price anywhere. And that's kind of a cool real estate story. And people respond to that because it's real. And we're seeing them, their closing rate has gone way up because they're responding with something personal and there's an instant connection if I've done the right job and matched the person with the right agent. So it makes a huge difference. And it's not, I think people talk about online leads like it's a bad word. And I think we all think of them like they're IDX leads. And there's a time and a place and some value in IDX leads. But those are also, you've got to have a really big plan in place. You've got to have a lot of patience to convert those people. The online leads that we get from our website are people who've been interacting with our brand sometimes for years before they reach out. And they've already decided to work with us, even though we've never met them. And that's one of the things that I think, if you can get the brand voice right, and you're giving content, people get to know you that way, it's a lot easier for them to decide and want to work with you rather than, I saw a property and, can you tell me how much it's going to sell for? Because those are just a lot more painful. So when we look at closing rates, we're probably closing 30 or 40% of the leads that we get because they've already self-selected out. They already know there are people and that we are going to offend some people and those people are not going to reach out, and we're okay with that too.
Yeah, as you should be. So with that, then, this is kind of curious. With that, does well, obviously, like responsiveness in that you need to respond to the leads matters. But do you find that the response rate in the you got to respond in the first 2 minutes is the same when you're generating those leads versus like a site like a Zillow or something like that?
No, I mean, we certainly still respond within 3 hours, and we try to do it right away.
That's a good thing to do. It's a good practice. But I think a lot of people really struggle with these quote unquote online leads from third party vendors, these IDX leads, frankly, because they're so there's that sense of immediacy that they have to have of I'm at an appointment. How am I answering this call right this second or responding to that lead right this second?
And that's because that person is seeing a real estate agent as a commodity. And they don't care who answers the phone. They don't care who shows them the house and puts the paperwork together. We are just a commodity to them. And again, there's a time and a place, and people have built some huge businesses on those leads. And if you know how to convert them, you can make a lot of money. But it's very different when you've got somebody who's like, wow, you're my people. And I want to work with you. And they're not going to give up on us if we don't respond in 5 minutes. And they haven't emailed 10 people in a row.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's very different.
So let's kind of shift gears a little bit. We'll come back to the site a little bit more, but you've built a really impressive team, and as you say, out of the good problem of having too much business, which is a great problem to have. But I'm curious, the website kind of being the real bread and butter of the team. Do you have the team contribute to content? Are there expectations on that? Or is the team really this is something you provide to the team and they're just expected to close the deals and work the clients?
Well, and both in a way. Part of how we structured our team is that we're going to do all of the things that most agents aren't good at, and they're going to work on relationships and sell stuff. And that's their primary job. And so there's no expectation. Nobody has to participate in anything. There could be some huge benefits to it. About 2 years ago, we decided to make our team much more visible on the site. We are not, we've never been that team with we're the big owners and we're going to come in and land the listing. And then I'll put you off to a little person to get the work done. For us, honestly, our agents are better agents than us. It's true. We'll get a really awesome listing. I know exactly who needs to go in and has the best chance of winning that. And it's not me. So we wanted to give them really good profile on the website. And so I don't care if people call them directly. We're a team working together. That said, there are some real benefits to them to having content about them. So we're getting really good participation in the spotlights. We're doing 2 to 3 stories a month, sometimes from the client perspective, sometimes from the agent perspective. There's a good one coming out tomorrow. So they can get involved in that sort of stuff. I've got 2 of the agents right now also doing our real estate crush of the week, which is one of our most popular features. And it's literally them going in and picking some hot property that is not listed by us. And we break all of the rules. So we don't call, we don't ask permission. And what tends to happen is the agents will share our post and be like, oh my God, we got chosen as the Brill Crush of the Week. And my client is so thrilled. So, and it's always a really positive, and we love this house. And so our agents do that too, because they're in the MLS every day, and it's fun to kind of look at, sexy properties or good value properties.
I love that. So, and
there's no real expectation that they must do those things.
Yeah, but I also think and I've had some conversations independently, but I think that you run your team really effectively because like there is this accountability that is expected of them, and accountability that they're held to. And I always have the saying that the only people that are afraid of accountability are the ones who are afraid to do the work. And so like Mel has done amazing things with her team. Those of you guys that have teams on here saying like, you know, in your CRM, I remember you saying I'll pick a contact and like the expectation is that they have followed up, and she'll pick them randomly. And so like that sort of accountability, I think, is not like harsh accountability. It likely gets them kind of motivated and incentivized to really be doing the follow-up, right?
Well, and in truth, they came up with the idea of us auditing them.
Love that.
Because they wanted that level of accountability. So we'll audit. We have a very defined experience. So when a buyer or seller wants to work with the Brell team, they will have certain experiences at every moment. And sometimes are templated and sometimes very personal. So we audit that experience. We also audit the paperwork and the actual deal part of it and all the communication. We do that every 2 months for every agent. And we do lead auditing as well, which is like, hey, where are we at with this person? Oh, we only emailed them once. What's going on? Which is really good, and it keeps them accountable. I mean, they are certainly, they have a very high expectations of them, and people that we've got on the team are doing, you know, individually 35, 40 million a year, our top agents, and they're getting 80% of that business from us.
Awesome.
So there's no expectation that they're doing any prospecting or marketing on their own. There's expectations around their past clients and how they treat them. There are expectations on how we treat our current clients and leads. But actually my preference is nobody's out there, you know, trying to do postcard campaigns or anything like that, because it just muddies it all up, and we're fully digital and it works.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Okay, so let's shift gears back to the site. So somebody that's like, wow, Mel's really impressive. First off, obviously, thank you that you think Mel's impressive. She is. But say somebody wants to get started, like, are there any kind of free tools out there that they can utilize to sort of say like, here's where I'm at and here's where I need to go kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing, which everybody should do, no matter if you want to be a digital marketer or a blogger or not, is you need to get your Google My Business page. Okay. And you can literally Google My Business. And what that is, if you were to Google right now, the Brell team, it's that real estate that takes up about 3/4 of the first page, is usually on the right-hand side. It'll have our reviews. There'll be a map to our location. That's the Google My Business page. And that is arguably the most important of anything digital for a real estate agent.
Awesome.
Because there's nothing more local than real estate. And when somebody's sitting at home and Googles, I need a realtor to sell my house, Google is going to geotag all of the Google My Business pages and serve up people who are close to them.
Yes.
And honestly, it can take you as little as 15 minutes to set up. It's not hard. It walks you through it. You can add images, videos. You can actually add your listings and your blogs. There's a lot of stuff you can do with it. We're the #1 realtors throughout Toronto on Google. Right. In that Google My Business thing. So forget about like stats and all that boring stuff. The thing that matters to me most is that I'm showing up #1 there. So part of that is, of course, getting a lot of reviews on your Google page. Things change over time. Reviews are a critical component of sending signals to Google that you're valid and you're an authority, and sending signals to potential clients. Yep. So I would say that that's the #1 place. So once you set up your page, start collecting reviews there. Because once Google's like, wow, 130 people like this person, they must be a great realtor and I should show it on the first page.
Yeah.
Google makes money by delivering what people want and giving them the results they want. So the more signals we can send to them that we're authorities and we do a good job, the more likely they're going to show our website.
That's great. That's great. So speaking of Google, the kind of this mother lord theory that we've got. So you and I were having some casual conversation about some of the things that you can do that we don't know about, the average person doesn't know about, that actually harms you on Google. So what are some of those things?
So the first thing is the mobile friendliness of your site. I think in the takeaway, I put a link where you can actually put in your website and see how Google sees it. It's about 3 years ago, Google said, you know what, mobile phones are here to stay. And we care less about what happens on a desktop than we do about what happens on a mobile. So you know those sites that you go on your phone and you've got to like pinch and squeeze? Those sites don't show up in Google search results anymore.
Yeah, because you don't stay on for good reason.
Exactly, because they know it's a terrible user experience. And the interesting thing that Google did last fall is they said, we care so much about this, that site that you've got to pinch and squeeze on a phone, I'm not showing it to people on desktop anymore. Yeah. That was huge. And most people didn't know. Realtors were some of the worst hit because a lot of people have templated sites that are not responsive, and responsive means that kind of, it's bigger and smaller on your iPad or your phone, depending on where you're at. So I got a doggy barking in the background.
Around here.
Yeah, he's a pain in the ass. But yeah, so make sure your website is mobile friendly, because if it's not, that's going to be like number one. You're going to not really show up, no matter how many pretty blogs you write and the nice colors that you use. You've got to be responsive and mobile friendly website. From there, Google wants to see things like things are well written. They want to see content that's updated. If you haven't added a page to your site in 2 years, they probably don't think you're in business anymore. So you need to be constantly refreshing some content on there. And one of the biggest mistakes people make, I do a lot of podcasts, and people get excited and they see my site and they go off, and then they attempt to rewrite my blogs by changing the word Toronto to the Salt Lake City. And that's the worst thing you can do, because Google knows that my site published that content first. And unless 75% of that content is changed, Google knows you stole it. And then you're in Google jail. And when you're in Google jail, there's almost nothing you can do to get out of it. You can't control it. They will decide perhaps to let you out of jail, or you'll just stay in Google jail and your website will be pointless.
Yeah.
So that's really important when you think of okay, I want to go out and run a bunch of sites. It's nice to read things and get ideas about what other people are doing. I do that, but I'll always close that blog before I start writing my own, so that there's not that temptation. I'm not cutting and pasting and replacing words.
Right. So let me ask you this then, kind of jumping ahead with that, is if I come up with a list of blogs I think I should write, is it a good strategy to Google that topic before to see if somebody's come up with something very similar? Or are you talking true, copying and pasting a lot of this blog?
It depends what your goal is. So I do a lot of search engine optimization. So I do a lot of research on what words are buyers and sellers using when they search on Google, because I want Google to show my website for that. Yeah. And if I'm doing something, I just wrote a blog on how to buy a condo, because I knew that was something that people were Googling a lot in Toronto, and we sell a lot of condos. So I wrote about a 2,500 page guide, not really blog, about that. And I did research on words. I also went to research, what is Google putting on page 1 right now? What is Google like for that? And how can I be better?
Okay.
So I was better by going longer. I made it more readable. I made it prettier. And I got to position 8 within 2 weeks.
That's amazing.
Pretty proud of that.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. I think it's so good. And I think you guys, even if you just, first off, don't steal Melanie's shit. I'll be really pissed if you do. But besides for that, you should go check it out, because a lot of the stuff that she puts out there, I think is just such natural, why didn't I think about it to write about that? And so besides for the blogs, one of the things that I've loved on your site, and you may be kind of updating this when you guys do your facelift, is your neighborhood guides. I love your neighborhood guides, because I can say, I've been to Toronto once or twice, and I swear I read those neighborhood guides and I feel like I know what neighborhood I'd want to go to look. And I think that really is where a lot of people struggle. Buyers especially struggle with it, but agents struggle with how can I tell them that that's a really good neighborhood for them, and navigate fair housing and make sure that I'm not dealing in all that. But so in your neighborhood guides, what are some things that you focus on to really make that compelling for readers?
And I think the key with the neighborhood guide is you've got to be telling them something they can't get somewhere else. If all you're doing is rewriting Wikipedia, you're never going to beat Wikipedia. Right. And you're not adding any value. So our kind of most popular section of our neighborhood guides is what we love and what we don't. Mm-hmm. So again, kind of keeping on with our brand of we tell you the truth. It was you know what? Parking is horrific on this street. It's really, really bad. And you need to make sure you buy a house with a parking spot, or get ready, or don't have a car, because it's going to be really hard. So it's some insider information, and it's not just with cafes and restaurants and all the standard stuff everybody's saying. Yeah. And I think that's the key, what gets people excited. I mean, I do a section on your typical neighbor. We don't have the same fair housing laws here. Right. But there's still ways of doing it of the, who's moving into the neighborhood and, is it investors? And that's a popular part because people are like, oh, that could be a neighborhood for me. And
yeah,
we've
added
a bunch of stats.
Is so appealing to a reader and you've written a really great neighborhood expert thing recently, which is jogging my memory on this. But what I think is so appealing is it's not just like what can't they find anywhere else, but you saying that parking really sucks on that street or it's really hard also tells me that you're spending time in that neighborhood. So it's not like you're just like pulling some stats on that neighborhood or like Googling restaurants in Uptown or wherever it may be. You've been there. And I think that is really what so many clients are looking for, because these days, like someone said it at a conference probably 5 years ago that you've got to be a neighborhood expert, and literally every real estate agent calls himself a neighborhood expert now, except they haven't been in half of the neighborhoods they're working in.
Well, and I think, a lot of our neighborhood guide content, we actually outsourced and had somebody else write. Yeah. And then we took that content and added our spin to it of like, oh my God, there's one of the nicest streets of Victorian houses in Brockton Village. Yeah. And it's one of my favorite streets in the city. So we added that personal touch. So it feels like we wrote the whole thing, even though realistically I outsourced it for like $100 per guide.
Yes.
We're about to do a whole bunch more. So there's a way of doing both, right? Where you're not having to do all of the work. Mm-hmm. The neighborhood stuff is very powerful. The blog you're talking about works in conjunction with that. So it's only a month old. It's doing really well. And what it is 88 things to consider when choosing your next neighborhood. Now, partly I've written that blog to connect people to all of the stuff that exists, but I'm also trying to get them earlier in their search for a neighborhood. I know that when you start being like, I wonder where I should live next, your next question is probably I need to find a realtor.
Yeah.
So that's how I've almost like backed up the search a little bit, as opposed to they've already decided they want to, live in Leslieville and they're going to go find out more about Leslieville. So I'm trying to hit people at different stages of the decision-making process.
Yeah. And that's so important too, because so when you think of like your traditional online leads off like Zillow or realtor.com or something like that, you're thinking of, a lot of people also struggle with these because they're like, I want the person that wants to buy their house tomorrow. And that's just not the case with most of them. But I love the idea of trying to get people earlier in the search because, it's the same concept of when a broker is hiring a new agent versus a seasoned agent. Like sometimes, as much as I love them, seasoned agents can be more difficult to work with because they have all these bad habits that they need to break, and then you need to establish new good habits. Whereas a new agent, like you can just already establish those good habits. It's the same thing with buyers. Like if you catch somebody that's just been looking at 10 million properties and still hasn't talked to a lender and has 9 months left on their lease, like that person is more difficult to deal with than the person that's like, where do I want to live? Like I like that, when you can help walk them through the whole process in your way and in their way, I think it's a much better relationship and experience.
Well, I think if you spend that first time writing out those personas and who your people are, it's a lot easier to figure out at what points in times they're turning online or to social or to friends and family for recommendations. Mm-hmm. And you're making sure that you're layering people at all of those stages. So, for example, we just launched this summer. So we have a lot of cottage countries kind of around, like we've got maybe 10 or 15 cottage areas around Toronto that we don't work in, like they're 2, 3, 4 hours away. We developed 3 personas. So people who couldn't afford a house in Toronto decided to rent and wanted to buy a cottage instead. Yep. Then we have our people who want to retire in cottage country. And then we've got your typical cottage people who are usually 45 years old, between like 43 and 47 demographically, because that's when people buy a cottage because their kids are at the right age. Yes. So then we write Facebook ads for those 3 target audiences. We write content for those 3 target audiences. And I'm going to hit them at every step of their journey.
I love that. That's amazing. That's amazing.
And again, you start with one persona, right? Don't start with one.
Exactly. And I think that, and they develop over time because so a lot of agents that work with us, may come to us at a newer stage. And, for instance, I got into real estate when I was 22 years old and I didn't know anybody that could afford to buy a house. So I was working with tons of young renters, and that evolved into young first-time home buyers. and now it's people who are having kids and families and things like that. And so like your personas, like maybe that's a good question. How often do you revisit these? Or because I assume they evolve over time.
So mostly what somebody will fit into a new category. So like my first time buyer will hit into my move up buyer category, for example.
Right.
So the persona is still the same and the fears and hopes of that first time buyer are the same, but someone has transitioned into a new category. And they've got names and like they're like real people to me. And a lot of them are based on real people. Because like, okay, what keeps Tim and Sally up at night?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what are the things that they hated through this process? What did they love? And how do I get more of Tim and Sally's? And honestly, I think if you're going to start with that, do the people you want to work with and you're already working with. And I think there's an aspirational one too, right? Who do I want to work with?
Yes. Yes.
So we have an aspirational one. His name is Alex, and we call him an accessible baller because he's got a lot of money and he's buying a higher price point than we operate in, but he's also still very real and genuine and will resonate with the brand. And we know where he's hanging out and where he's eating and all of those things, so that we can make sure that we're talking to Alex, knowing that Alex is not our client today, but who we would like to be our client next year.
Well, and this is like, to me, this is 101 about marketing in general and business presence and branding in general. It's so much more than a website. It's you just hit the nail on the head. Like, it's where he's spending his time. It's what he's doing with his free time. It's all of these other things. And so there's that element to it too, of in order to know where you need to be and what you need to be saying, you've got to define these people.
We do. I mean, a big market for us is the kids whose parents are moving to retirement home. Okay. Suddenly we have all these 8-year-old clients who were like, how are they responding to our message? Because that's not like they should resonate to. Then we're like, oh, it's the kids doing it. So now we're writing guides and help for the kids because we know they're the ones hiring the realtor, and we're giving them all the information they need. And then we've got the right agents to be able to service that. So it doesn't have to be your typical, it's not millennials.
Yeah.
It's just online.
Yeah.
Anybody.
So I'm going to wrap with this question because I think it's an important one. So knowing that you were one of these early adopters of websites and you doubled down on the strategy and you saw the opportunity quickly, are you willing to share what you think is next and where you would really invest some time and resources moving forward?
I mean, the big thing I think that we're focused on right now is everything to do with the voice search. Mm-hmm. So it's got adoption that's much faster than anything we've ever seen. And we just started using Alexa at our listings last week, which was super exciting. So now when someone goes into a brow listing, they can go and they can ask Alexa, how old is the roof? Tell me about the neighborhood. What school district am I in? They can ask Alexa all of those questions, which is fun.
I was showing a house to a buyer 2 weeks ago, and her name was Alexa, and the husband called for her, and Alexa replied. It was weird.
Oh, that's weird. Yeah.
We were like...
It's still a little creepy. We've got signage and stuff so people know kind of how to interact with this. So that's fun on the experience side. What it does on the marketing side is now how I write, and what I'm writing is I want Alexa to, she's probably going to go off now because she heard me say her name. I want her to recommend me, and I want her to recommend my websites. So how I'm writing is different. So I'm writing a much shorter things. I'm doing a glossary. I'm doing a lot of FAQs because I want Alexa to be able to give quick answers. Yep. The other day, my parents were here and they'd never seen Alexa. And of course, my dad is like, Alexa, tell me who is the best realtor in Toronto. And she actually says there's no better choice than the Brell team.
I mean, if that's not a ringing endorsement in front of your parents, I don't know what is.
Exactly. It's huge. So right now for me, it's focusing on voice search and optimizing the website and the content and everything I do for voice.
That's awesome. I love that. I think that's so helpful. Mel, if somebody wanted to find your website, what is it, or where could they find you?
So getwhatyouvant.ca is the website. Our Facebook page is pretty active, and we post all of our content on there. So that's always a good place. And then if you want me personally, definitely Facebook is the easiest way versus phone or any of those other devices.
Yes, all those other devices. Or just ask Alexa for the top realtor in Toronto.
Exactly.
Well, Mel, thank you so much for joining us. I've got tons of notes myself. I think I'll be revisiting my webpage later today. It's a constant struggle to keep up, but thank you so much. We love having you. You're always welcome back. You guys, next month we will be back with a very special guest, Wayne Salmons, who runs Hero Nation Coaching. I hope that you guys will see that this means obviously myself as a coach having another coach on the monthly coaching club. It's because I really believe that like we all have different voices and different things to offer, and Wayne is one of the best that I know. He's got an amazing story. He wrote an amazing book called The Art of Getting Back Up, which you should definitely check out. But we will be back with Wayne next month. So thanks so much. You guys have a great one and keep being epic. I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks.